Hey everybody, and thank you for joining me for a special edition of the Richard Listens show. I've got my baseball all-star cap on, and we'll see why in just a minute. As our guest today has been around the realm of professional baseball, and we are fortunate enough to catch Michel, certified mental performance consultant, while baseball is on a temporary hiatus. So again, I'm Richard Listens. This is the Richard Listens Show. Thank you for listening. Again, check me out on Instagram at Richard Listens, or go to patreon.com/Richard Listens to be a supporter of the show and see advanced content and become a subscriber. Your gift of $1 to $3 a month, anything helps provide advanced content and gets you special perks and privileges. Thanks again to our sponsors, Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, fighting. I've been a part of it, workouts at least. You get a chance to work out with MMA fighter and ask Q&A of professionals, and Impact Dental Designs mouth guards to perfect your athlete or you yourself as a boxer, MMA fighter, soccer player, football player, etc. Without further ado, my guest today, Michel, enters his 4th season as the Astros mental skills coordinator. He works closely with player development, sports medicine, performance staff, and front office personnel. Prior to joining the Astros, he spent 4 years working as a lead master resilience trainer, performance expert at the Comprehensive Soldier and Family Fitness Trainer in Honolulu, Hawaii. What a mouthful. This man is talented. He's knowledgeable. He provides hands-on training and self-development tools so that members of the Army family were better able to cope with adversity, perform better in stressful situations, and thrive on and off the battlefield. He's a PhD in sports and exercise psychology from West Virginia University, where he was their mental skills coordinator from 2009 to 2013. He's helped the Mountaineers, West Virginia Mountaineers athletes, their Olympic trial participants, NCAA All-Americans, Conference Coach of the Year winners. And he himself has a master's in science from exercise and sports sciences and his BA in psychology at California, San Diego. He's also listed on the United States Olympic Committee Sports Psychology Registry. So without further ado, we welcome to the show, Mr. Michel. Hey, Jesse, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me, Richard?
I can. I just got done reading your praises about working with Army war veterans and baseball players, and I hope roofers don't come at us during.
You never know. They're next on the list. I might have to start being a consultant for roofing companies. We'll see. If you hear any loud banging, there's no war going on. It's well, Florida can wreak havoc up on a roof. So.
That's a good point. You got to stay prepared for hurricane season.
That's right. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thank you so much. You're seeing my outdoor office. This has become my quarantine office. So
love that. Looks very comfortable. How's the LA weather these days?
You know what? It's beautiful. It was kind of like wintry in March and April, windy and gusty, but now we have hummingbirds will come over my shoulder here and butterflies. So it's like having an outdoors session, but the heat's finally starting to get up there. We haven't had the LA heat. Man, you're an LA native, right?
I am. Yeah, I'm from San Fernando Valley originally, but I haven't lived there for probably close to 20 years now since I moved away to college, but still get back there at least a few times a year, try to mix in a visit, when I'm on the road for work, and then sometime in the off season. But, family still lives there and friends still live there. So definitely call that place home.
Yeah. So working with Major League Baseball, the schedule is rough. Do you work with all the way through the minor leagues, through the professional players?
I do, yeah. Each club has a different setup for their program. Ours is set up where my job is to travel to the different minor league teams in addition to spending time in Houston, during a normal season, we'll call it. I'm probably in Houston for, a total of 5-6 weeks out of the year. During home games, and may travel on the road, depending on the situation, and then also visiting our other minor league affiliates a few times during the year.
And you're having a growing family of your own now, so you get a sense of, and congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
So you get a sense of what players go through with being on the road. I know I see some pictures trying to bring your family out there with you. How do you balance all of it?
Yeah, not well, not well. This is the old practice what you preach, right? So I had when I first was hired by the Astros, I had 0 children, and now we're a few weeks away from number 2. So really, the way I balance it is to be married to the most forgiving and sensitive and understanding woman on the planet. I mean, that's really the answer. All kidding aside, she's allowing me to do what I love, and we're very fortunate. Our off-season home is out in Florida, like I said earlier, in Tampa, and she has family around here, so we do have some support, even though my family's not here. But without them, I don't know if how long our marriage would have lasted. You got to have support, though, right?
That's what we tell the athletes, right?
That's right. Mental health 101. Make sure you got the right people in your corner. So.
Well, especially, going from being there for performers to raising a family of your own, it's, and the attention that it demands, very, very different. And I'm very thankful, even though at the time I have no idea, someone told me to take a job with LA County where the shift was 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., Sunday to Wednesday.
Oof.
And I said, I was like, why would I want, I was on the bottom of my list, and they said, no, that's the one where you'll be home for breakfast, home for dinner, and you'll figure out when to sleep.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think, as far you mentioned our players earlier, I think for the parallel is like, well, they are coming and going as well. And this even goes back to soldiers, right? If we would have these programs when I was working with the Army, transition programs, right? To and from deployment, redeployment, you go down range, you come back, and, we would teach these courses to spouses and to soldiers who are about to leave or about to come back, and really just talk about kind of the transition and the different roles that are assumed when you're gone. You have your certain, every home, right, has its norms, its collective norms, its social norms, who's responsible for what chores, who puts the baby to bed, who cooks dinner, and if you're not there, it's not like those things don't get done. They just get done by the other person, right? And so then they take ownership of those activities, and they find meaning in that. And for our baseball players, they're kind of in and out throughout the year, and then they come home in the off season, or they come home during the season. And now they want to reintegrate into family life, and it can certainly be a tough transition. But I think to a man, for our players, if you ask them, they would all say the same things about their wives, is that they wouldn't be able to do what they did without, the support from their spouse. And really, where you find it, I'm not going to say it's easier. The challenges are different, but where you are, depending on in your career, if you're an established veteran who's already made enough money to last several lifetimes. If you're a up and coming, player who just made his debut and you got a young family, if you're somewhere in the middle, and then you have this 90% of our player population are minor leaguers, and a lot of them have wives and support groups, and they're not bringing in the big bucks. So that's where, those relationships can really be tested at that level, where they don't necessarily have the safety cushion or safety net to fall back on.
Right, because some are just committing and really hoping for that one big break.
There's a great, I don't know if any of your listeners are into baseball, but there's a great podcast by Colin McHugh. He pitched for the Astros for the last 5-6 years. He signed a free agent deal with the Red Sox, and he's a brilliant guy. He's very thoughtful, really interesting stories. And, kind of one of the themes of his podcast is the minor league grind. And when he got married early, I think he was in low A, and him and his wife kind of had lived in like 25 different places or something by the time he got to the major leagues, which is just an astounding number and totally abnormal and not healthy, for humans to be, in and out of situations like that. But if this is the path they choose, they got to make it work.
Yeah, and for baseball players, right, the park becomes home. The clubhouse, the tribe of teammates. How do you bring the family along with you and create that as an organization? Can you create that kind of family culture, or is it just
Yeah, I
Some
think
things you can only.
yeah, it can be tough. I think what you see is depending on when you're drafted, that's kind of like your, think about when you went to elementary school, you were with the kindergartners the first time, and that was like your group, right? And each year you kind of elevated and went to the next grade, but they stayed your friends, and it might have changed a little bit, but you for the most part you played on the same teams with the same people, or you did sleepovers with it's kind of similar in sport where you get drafted in 2020. Your draft class is going to be those are the relationships that are going to be strongest because you're probably moving through the system with them. And what I've found is that naturally the girlfriends or the wives or the support networks kind of fill in, right? Where your girlfriend or your wife is going to know your close friend's girlfriend or wife, because when you're on the road and you're in Fayetteville and you're in Elmira for the week, and your girlfriend,
shout out to New York,
right? Or yeah, whatever. Or you're in you're in some other Carolina league town for the week. Your girlfriend's still home working at the restaurant or at the mall, or they're working at the bank or with the other girlfriends because they're not traveling. So that's typically where you see the support network kind of grow, and you create that culture. The manager at the affiliate can create that culture as well if they have family night or team dinners or whatever they do. But it's really a challenge because the industry is cutthroat. There's no guarantee you're going to be here tomorrow. People are released and traded all the time. It's really, in terms of psychological safety, and it's not a very healthy environment to work in, at least until you get to the point where you've secured huge contracts. And even then, the pressure is still through the roof. But to get there, those first 5-7 years on average they're pretty brutal.
Yeah, and I want to start with you started talking about the military and your own experience there. What was that like for you? I mean, your dad. Thank goodness, I appreciate his introduction as a baseball coach, and been doing it for a couple decades. I think. Is he still going?
He's still going. I think the games were canceled this year, unfortunately. But as far as I know, he still has plans to coach next year.
Next year, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So you come from a sport family, and then going from LA to West Virginia. I mean, that's a pretty intense, focused, multi-sport town. What was that like for you to go from being around, NCAA elite performing Conference of the Year players, and then making that transition, applying these skills to military populations?
Yeah, the experience at West Virginia and Morgantown, shout out to the Mountaineers, was incredible. It's one of, in my opinion, the better training grounds, around the country for folks who do what we do. And so fortunate to get the opportunity to work with a whole, host of athletes from different sports, primarily swimmers, our men's and women's swim team. I was there when we transitioned from the Big East to the Big 12. So that was really special. You talk about a jump in competition and talent, and swimming, there's no pro swimming. So a lot of the Olympic swimmers you see are either in college or right out of college. And so the level of competition was really high. We worked with a bunch of different club sports there, had some great training and education. And like you said, you just get exposed to kind of the elite level athlete. But then you also get to see how that's kind of where it starts to separate. You go to college, you're away from home for the first time. There's a lot of opportunity to get involved in activities that might not be the best thing for your athletic development or your personal development. And so you start to see kind of who's suspect to maybe fall off in terms of commitment, or maybe they were a great student in high school and they're having trouble balancing how to be a student athlete, or maybe they have difficulty saying no to their older teammates, or whatever the situation may be, where they have these goals and dreams of competing and having success at the collegiate level. And then you get there and
there's all these distractions.
Correct. I didn't plan for any of this, and I don't have the skills to be able to cope with any of it. And so it was neat to just kind of be in that type of fertile hotbed for being able to apply what we do. And then the transition to the military, again, I didn't have a swimming background at all. I didn't have any military background. None of my immediate family members served. I was other than the obviously utmost respect for service members, I didn't know the first thing about the Army or being a service member. I didn't know the difference between a general and a private, which now sounds absurd, but it was the truth. And so I watched as many documentaries and listened to as many interviews and read as many books as I could about what it's like to be a soldier, and just recognize that the best way to approach it is to ask a lot of questions and go in with an open mind, and recognize that they're probably they're better experts at not only what they do than I am, but how to apply what I do to them than I am. Because I didn't know what mental skills or performance psychology looked like with soldiers. And so a lot of it was trying to understand the context and the challenges and the obstacles, and, trying to figure out how the culture presented itself every day with different groups. And, I think that's one thing that I still need to get better at is trying to see the 30,000 foot view. They don't really, in your Sports Psych 101 book, you talk about all these ways to help athletes, but that you forget that they're in this system. It's this dynamic system that has a lot of pressure points, and a lot of people hold influence at a lot of different times. And if you could be grinding and working and trying to help a kid or an athlete get better, and then one person says one thing and 6 months of work is wiped away. And so if you're not planning or preparing for that, or you can't see that down the road, man, you're going to be struggling. So that was part of it, is understanding just the system, that I was working in.
And does the military have full buy-in? I mean, I know baseball is now almost every team has a certified mental performance consultant. That wasn't always the case. Does the military across the board, they want to see this now for their young soldiers, that they have this kind of knowledge and skill base?
Sure. I think it's, the term buy-in in the military world, it means something different than the civilian world, because really they don't have a choice. They're going to be told where to be, when to be there. And it's our job as, I was a contractor working for the Army. It's our job to I would call it edutainment, right? We're going to train them. We're going to make things enjoyable, challenge them a little bit. But whether it's a group of 18-year-old privates or a group of 35-year-old, sergeant majors, you got to know kind of who your audience is and use appropriate examples and try to connect. But if we had something on the schedule a Tuesday at 4, they're all there. They're there at 3:50. Their water bottle in hand and their dip can in hand, and they're ready to go because their commanding officer told them they had to be there. So once they're there, now we can have a good conversation, and I can. Part of my job is to help them understand how I can help them perform better. And once they do that, then the buy-in is not really that's moot at that point. Once you make that connection or they have that aha moment, they've bought in. And that's part of that is up for them to decide, right? You think of stages of change. What's their mindset going into a training? What have they heard about myself as the trainer or our company? We were called CSF2. What did they hear about CSF2's trainings? Did you learn a lot? And that's what I mean, the culture. Who do you have to go talk to? If I'm getting I'll give you an example. If I have a group of 20-year-old sergeants or 21-year-old sergeants, I might need to go to their staff sergeant the day before and kind of have a conversation with him just so he knows who I am and how he can pitch the training and say, man, you guys are going to love this guy. He does X, Y, and Z. He's full of shit, but he's a lot of fun, blah, blah, blah. Okay. They're going to come into that in a much different way than so you got to know kind of who the influencers are. And for baseball players, the beauty is that they're not like soldiers. I might see them once and I might not see them again for weeks, or I might see them for a week straight and never see them again. Our players, I see them every day or every other day, or, we know we have this opportunity to develop long lasting relationships with them. So we can kind of pick and choose our insertion points and how we're going to lay out our program. It's really a luxury of this environment compared to the military environment.
It is, and that's a great point, because the stigma used to be in the military, right? You don't want to be seen talking to someone who has any kind of mental health background. Yeah. But I'm wondering if now that the landscape of soldiers is so much, younger younger generation and wanting every edge, that there might be more receptivity.
Yeah, I think that stigma, might still be around. I haven't worked at the Army for 4 years, but there's people that have beliefs about everything. You name a topic, and there are people on polar opposite sides of the fence, right? To me, the thing that always stood out was that the elite soldiers, your Rangers, your Navy SEALs, your high performing soldiers, they ate it up. They couldn't get enough. And so that's all I need to know is the guys that want to get better, they understand the value. And the guys that say, man, I don't believe in what you're doing, or I don't buy, this whole thing, or I don't need you. You're right. You don't need me. You don't need what I provide. But if you want it, here's the buffet of items that can help you perform better. You can choose, what you want to eat on any given night. I'm still going to be here serving. But if you're not ready to come to the table yet, I got to do a better job of cooking, meals that smell better. It's not my, it's not his fault that he doesn't have buy-in. I got to be a better practitioner.
You're bringing up memories of living in a fraternity house.
Yeah.
So do you feel like, being with the Astros, being present in the dugout, being around them eases that comfort level up where a player will just kind of over time eventually come to you?
For sure. And I think we try to set up our program where we're seen as just another part of the coaching staff, right? And the luxury, of this environment is that a lot of our players, they come from the college level where they did have a little bit of exposure to a mental skills coach or a mental performance coach or the mental game or whatever it is. So there's at least kind of an inherent knowledge of what we do. We have to mold and define it a little bit different. Each program's different. Each practitioner is different. You and I are gonna teach the same thing much different ways, and that's okay. That's part of kind of the art of what we do, right? But on the flip side, it is about like, how do you set up an environment where you're seen by the players as just layered in, to an integrative system, and that is being in the clubhouse. It's going out to dinner. It's sitting down in the cafeteria. It's being involved in pitchers meetings that they're having with their pitching coaches. It's just being around, and the ultimate athletes look to their managers and coaches to kind of see what's okay and what's not. And that goes for personnel too. If the manager doesn't say a word to the third athletic trainer for 3 weeks after the season starts, ain't no way players are going to that athletic trainer, because the nonverbal communication is, you got to stay away from that guy. Mm-hmm. So unless you're layered and integrated into the system, and you're one of the guys, and you're not the mental performance coach, you're just Jesse.
That's beautiful. And the Houston Astros, have been really well known for cultivating the youth and building up as an organization and fostering that, just being a part of a family. What's it been like for you to be a part of that, the evolution over the, and all the success in recent years?
Sure. It's been a dream. It's been a professional dream. Even with, so we're recording this, the end of May in 2020. Obviously, the last 8 months have not been the easiest to be a part of the Astros organization. But, I'm proud of the program we've built. I'm proud of the personnel in the organization, and what we've created. I'm proud of the success we've had. I read the articles, I watch the news, but I know what goes on behind closed doors, and I know the type of people that are involved with developing these players. And there isn't a better group of coaches that I'd want to be around. And so, what kid grows up and doesn't want to be a part of, 2 World Series experiences, and that's just kind of what we do.
Yeah. So how's that been for you to see the people? So, sorry for that interlude for an advertisement for our sponsors, Impact Dental Designs. We're back with Michel sharing about his experience with 2-time World Series attendees, Houston Astros, and what it's like to be a part of a family and a culture that's growing, and so much is positive, and then there's controversy in the last 8 months. Is it hard to separate yourself from the people and remain professional? I mean, have you been impacted, and how do you navigate through a crisis?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. It's been tough to kind of be labeled, I guess, just because you're a part of the organization. But like I said, I know the work that goes on behind closed doors. I know the type of people that I go to work with every day, and I'm proud to be a part of that group. I think that it's unfortunate, how the last 8 months have gone, but I don't have any control over that. I don't have any control over 2017. I don't have any control over what Major League Baseball does or doesn't do. I can just show up to work every day and try to be the best, practitioner that I can. Try to provide the best support that I can for our players and their family and staff, but also the other side, our front office staff and some of our scouts. And it's not just the 25 players on the field. I mean, there's 400 people, 500 people involved in this, making this machine operate. And, I think you'll probably have, unfortunately, their challenges arise, but, the real measure of a system or a man or woman is how they overcome those challenges. Right. So we're trying to do the best we can to make things right and to be the best organization that we can be. The organization has, made the decisions that they made in terms of personnel and how they're going to approach this. And, it's my job to come to work and let them worry about that and me do my job.
Yeah. And has there been any kind of organizational top-down message? Sometimes a crisis can really galvanize a group. Or just techniques that you bring to the players to try and keep this outside because they have to face it every minute they walk off the field.
Sure. I think, if you would have asked me that question 3 months ago before this whole pandemic, I probably would have had a different answer. We don't know what the season is going to necessarily look like this year. And so that brings different challenges to what's going on. But sure, I can tell you like during spring training that there were, top-down messages from the front office, from the ownership group, and there were, and we were putting systems in place in order to make sure that our players, if they needed to, we're going to be able to have the skills to handle and cope and thrive in, this condition or the situation that we saw in spring training, which frankly was something I'd never seen before in terms of other fans and whatnot. Now I say that, but it's not like, we're a 6-year-old Little League team out there trying to deal with fan interaction. You're talking about all-stars, Hall of Famers, guys that have been there, done that. That you don't get to that point by focusing on what's going on outside the lines. And so, while it's definitely tough, it's a different situation. It was addressed by multiple people in multiple ways. It certainly was a conversation in spring training, consistent conversation about how are we going to make sure that these guys are ready for these, I'll call them distractions, but I'll just call it a different type of season, right? Now, based on what's happened with COVID, who knows what this looks like. And once we figure it out, we'll go back to the drawing board and figure out the best approach based on the current situation.
Yeah, in a way, it gave people a bigger, opponent to look at, and some of the, we know with fanaticism, right? Fans are so attached to the team and their sport that their energy can get really misdirected towards players, even on a good day. So I know a lot of the work done in sports psychology is on mental toughness. How do you help a younger player maybe who's, not as thick-skinned?
Sure. So how do you help them deal with distractions?
Or just some of the negative charge. If they've always been star player, they've kind of haven't faced this kind of negativity, maybe adversity on the field, but the levels of negativity seem like they're rising, especially with, your Instagram account. I mean, all of a sudden you went from being, like you said, a small town guy maybe who was really well known, but now you're on a public scale and people are lashing out. Yeah,
I think part of the first thing is just kind of awareness and acknowledgement and acceptance as this is like the new reality. as opposed to trying to want to get back to something that will never happen. So once you accept that this is kind of the new reality, understanding, that being able to separate and put energy into what you can control, but also kind of take a look in the mirror and say, what's really driving, my response? Is it that I don't feel like I'm being heard? I don't have a voice, publicly? Is it that, the things the fans are saying, or the distractions that are coming in? Is it that, you feel like you're, I'd have to ask the player really, and each situation is different, but how are they processing the stress or the distractions that they're going through? And there's different approaches. My foundation, I would say, is in this idea that, look, your mindset and your beliefs really dictate how you see certain situations. So very rooted in just understanding self-talk, understanding your beliefs about different situations, and kind of the glasses that you put on that develop your perspective, that the way you're interpreting what's going on around you, it's rooted in your belief system. And so helping players really dive into that and understand whether those beliefs are even accurate or not. Excuse me. That's one place to start, helping them try to see, it could be as simple as, if it's Instagram, or do you have the discipline to delete the app? And if you don't, exploring, well, it's causing you all this strain and stress, what is it doing for you? Well, I really like the positive reinforcement, that I'm getting. Well, can we get that somewhere else? And if that's not an option, is that worth it? Is it real? And helping them kind of dive into maybe what they're experiencing from a distraction like Instagram, or because you're right. Excuse me. Let me take a sip of water real quick.
Yeah. Instagram, Twitter, right? We've seen more in basketball, right? You had, players on the Sixers arguing not only with fans, but with the management and players. Getting very public just because that impulsive need to defend.
That's right.
That if we're not skilled at it.
And I think for high level competitive athletes or high level performers in any industry, you're gonna find a lot of that, whether it's ego, whether it's the right to the willingness or want to defend yourself or stand up for yourself. There's a kind of a different route to take, maybe, that is a more mindfulness, acceptance based route, where the player doesn't feel like they have to do that. That takes a lot of work, I think, to get there, because that can be seen as weak, or you don't get the chance to defend yourself, or whatever that is. But that again goes back to the belief systems of the player and where those beliefs came from. It might have been how they were brought up, or and could be any area. Let me give you an example. Try to make this a little more concrete. Every player has a belief as to the fans' range of distractions. We're talking about the Astros here. And if their belief is, the fans can literally say anything they want, it's their right, it's human nature, or it's free will, we live in a free country, they can MF me and my baby down to the ground, then if that happens, they might not be as bothered. They might be able to let it off. But if their belief system is, look, you can rake me over the coals, but you leave my family out of it. Well, guess what happens when they bring up their family? They're going to be triggered. They're going to, they might talk back. They might respond. They might have some negative emotions that might show up in bad behavior. So part of it comes down to their own beliefs and how they're interpreting what's going on around them. So each player is different. You got to respect that in each player, but help them understand what's driving those responses.
Yeah, it's a good point, and I'm glad that you're there. That now that major league teams are allowing a professional in there, so that if you do the strong thing of not responding, at least you have a place you can express it. That's
Sure.
really the hard thing, right? Is like seeing the value in not responding, which as athletes, right, has always been that. That's how I establish how strong I am. My
That's
dominance.
correct. You attack, and so to expect them to turn that off when they feel threatened. You don't get to be a major league player by stepping back when you feel threatened, right? This game at this level is about, it's mano a mano. There's a lot on the line here every night. The feeling is palpable. The emotion is palpable in the locker room, in the clubhouse, and like this is our livelihood. And so you're conditioned to attack, right, when you feel threatened. So it takes I think of the Last Dance documentary has been on the last few weeks, and I think about the different personality types in those locker rooms where you have Jordan, who's the killer and the attacker, and then you have Pippen, and then you got Phil, who's running the show, that is really the Zen master and is probably is a Buddhist in disguise, and probably would be able to handle some of this with aplomb and a little bit differently.
Pretty amazing, huh? The types of personality characteristics that we're able to work alongside a competitor like Michael.
That's right.
Do you see a little bit of that with baseball? In baseball, obviously, it's not, it has to be a whole team effort, and you need your ninth guy as much as you need, and you had some key veterans on the teams when you made the World Series there. How do you do that? How do you make sure that their voice is as strong as the guy who's, Altuve, or Correa?
Sure. So that, I don't actually see that as my job necessarily. The clubhouse is going to police itself. We have a lot of established veterans. I'd be silly to think that anything that I say is going to outweigh something that Justin Verlander or a Jose Altuve says. That's just not how it works, and it shouldn't work like that.
But can you build up a player who's a role player to feel his importance?
Oh, for sure. But you also need other allies, and that goes back to understanding the context and environment, where it's a little bit different, in my opinion. In the past, I've worked more kind of not remotely, but there's a system in the profession where you might see an athlete once or twice a week away from the field, and then they go back, to the gym or the pool or the field that they were on. And that's valuable. That's beneficial, but it's not necessarily the work in their environment. And so you just have a different kind of interaction with the athlete when you're there with them and you're in kind of the culture and environment that they're working in. And so it might not be me who goes and says something that's going to do what you're saying. I might need to, depending on the player and where they're at in their career, I might need to have the coach go tell them something that I want to tell them. And that's okay. As long as the player is getting what they need from the right person, I'm okay with it. Like my ego doesn't need to be stroked enough where I have to, be the one to drop the aha moment, because I might not have that relationship with the player yet. You know what I mean? Because we have 250 players in our organization, and you're just not going to have the same relationship with every player. And so, you have to be smart about the message, the timing, who's going to deliver it. And if I'm working with a player who's in the major leagues that has only been there a few weeks or a few months, I got to see what's different about that player in his environment, his new environment now, because in AAA, he might've been the top dog. He was the alpha. He ran the dugout. He ran the clubhouse. That's not happening there. He all of a sudden turns into a mouse. I actually have to act different around him in that environment than I did in AAA because of I know it might sound silly, but it's a different environment, a different culture. And so whereas in AAA, I might have gone up to that player in the locker room with all the other players around. I wouldn't risk that in a major league clubhouse in that guy's first couple weeks in the big leagues. I'd make sure to take that guy, one-on-one or wait till he came to the batting cage. And so things like that, well, you got to think about how perception is reality. And you got to know kind of where you stand in each room that you're in, at least in my environment.
So, is there a future for him? Are the Astros creating a whole training program? Do you see, do you have interns coming in under you now? Do you see, performance psychology on the rise in professional sports, the need at least?
Yeah, I think that you're seeing teams invest in this area exponentially more than they did even 5-7 years ago. And I think that comes with organizations like the Association of Applied Sports Psychology, getting a national certification, you can become a certified mental performance consultant now. It comes with, Division I colleges, mandating that they have, whether it's a licensed psychologist or a CMPC to work with their student athletes, these big influencers in sport, investing the money instead of just, talking through lip service. And so that's where you see the gains. And we don't have an internship program yet. I would like to build that. We're still in our infancy here. We're in year 4. It's really just been January 2017 was when I was hired. And so, in 18, we brought in somebody else full-time. 19, we brought in somebody else full-time. This 2020, we brought in a hybrid affiliate coach that also has a sports psych background. So we've grown, each year. And I think the Astros were one of the last teams to kind of transition their model from a clinical treatment-based model to more of a strength-based preventative mental skills approach.
Is that what most teams are going to, or is it different by the organization?
It's totally different. Some teams programs are run by psychiatrists who kind of spearheads the department, and there's several mental skills coaches. Other teams have just one psychologist maybe. Other teams have a social worker on board. It really just depends on the team and the type of program that they want to develop.
Yeah. So, maybe in our closing segment here, first of all, how are you doing with this whole COVID? I know it's been too much of the focus, but we can't ignore it. How have you done with the quarantine, and how have you been able to guide players? This is totally anti-athlete, at least on the surface.
So it took us a couple of weeks to kind of figure out a system that's easy for our players and reliable for our coaches. So we do have, like every organization, we have very regularly scheduled Zoom calls and conference calls with players, for mental skills training. We have, some social media opportunities where we connect with players. Our coaches are doing a heck of a job, making sure our players are staying in shape and getting video and things like that. So like every organization's doing, and it's really just about trying to stay in touch with the guys and provide them opportunities if they want to reach out and connect where they can. But you're right, this is unprecedented. It's no one's ever tried to figure out how to do this before. And I think a lot of people are, they're just kind of anxious, and understandably so, about what's going to happen, whether it's minor leaguers and, their job, or whether it's staff members and potential furloughs. That's just part of it. And that's, on the one hand, that's the risk associated with being in any industry and something like this. But on the other hand, if a player wants to be a major leaguer, they got to perform, they got to get stronger, they got to develop the skill set. And so we try to keep our players reminded that this too shall pass, and that what feels heavy and what feels ominous and there's no light at the end of the tunnel, that's a matter of perspective, and that's a matter of belief and mindset, and that directly impacts the intent that they attack every workout, or how creative they're being with the resources available to them, things that are in their control. And we have, like I said, we have different topics, each day for our players to call in and video in and, talk about different aspects of the mental game. And, our major league staff is doing a good job as well of being in touch with players and giving them the resources that they need. And it's really about, finding a balance between showing support, but also, being careful not to overwhelm the players. Whether I'm contacting them, the athletic trainer, the strength coach, their hitting coach, their manager, it's just like, enough already. Like, I'm doing fine.
Our own anxiety can get passed on. Yeah,
exactly. So there's a balance there.
Yeah, and with so much unknown, I guess the decision will be made soon, whether there's a season or what the season will look like. How do you stay ready as an organization? Does it, or is everyone still kind of in this holding space?
No, we're working. I mean, there's we got a draft coming up in 2 weeks that we got to be prepared for. We got we got projects that we're doing, professional development projects. We got a bunch of proprietary stuff that every organization has that they're working on. Has nothing to do with a game at 7 o'clock that coaching staffs are prepared for. I mean, we got some groups of coaches are learning how to code. They're learning SQL and they're learning R. Other groups are taking other professional development courses. We work closely with our coaches. I had all of our coaches read The Inner Game of Tennis, and we did a series of workshops on how do you apply these principles to coaching. And so you just got to get creative.
That's right. I got to ask you. You always have good book recommendations. Before you go, please make another recommendation. Your Jesse's reads are always the best.
That's very kind. Yeah, so it's just you try to stay ready as best you can, and then at some point we'll get a call that says either this whole deal's bang this year, or you got to come back, and then we'll adjust.
So yeah, you have to use it as a professional, your own staying in the moment and being prepared for any outcome.
Yeah.
But it's historic, right? Has baseball season ever been canceled? There was one strike-shortened season.
Yeah, I don't know if a whole season's been canceled. They've obviously had a couple of strike-shortened seasons, I think. I think in 94, but then also in 80 maybe the season started a little late. There was obviously the years during the war where not all the players were playing. But, a whole season like this, it's scary for everybody. And then you have – but, I'm not a player in the union. I'm not an owner. There's not much I can do other than do my job every day and let those people, do their job. And, if I allow it to consume me, then I wouldn't – here's my belief. If I allow it to consume me, I wouldn't be very good at my job because it's out of my control.
And so much of, performance psychology, mental skills is controlling the controllables.
Sure. Yep. And identifying what is in your control. And if there's something that is causing you stress or anxiety or worry that's in your control, then there's the next step is taking action, problem solving, gathering information, identifying, what thinking traps are in. Are you jumping to conclusions? Do you not have all the information? Do you need to ask better questions in order to give yourself the best representation of accuracy in the situation?
Incredible stuff. Well, Jesse, Michel, real honor. I know it's been really hard to get you on the show during the season with the runs up to the World Series, the extended seasons you've had. So for my listeners, we selfishly appreciate that you've been quarantined.
Yeah, Richard, I really appreciate you having me on. And like you said, I feel like this is like a year at least in the making. We've been trying to connect here for a while now, and thank you for all you do and for putting this podcast out. And if any of your listeners ever want to reach out, feel free to get in touch.
How can they get a hold of you, please?
Yeah, feel free. You can get at me on Twitter. It's just Jesse D. Michel, Jesse D. Michel. I'm on Instagram as well, but I'm on Twitter. That's the best way to find me. Or shoot me an email, jessedmichel@yahoo.com. Feel free. I'm happy to connect that way as well. But and any questions you have, if you're interested to hear more about what we do or how we do it, or you're interested in finding out how to get involved in the industry, feel free to reach out.
Growing industry, really important to have a voice of someone who's been there for soldiers and being there for our athletes. One thing is for sure, they're human beings too, and they need support in handling stress and becoming the peak performers that they aspire to be. Okay, Jesse, send us out with your next book recommendation. I know last time I think you told me it was called Rise of Superman. I read that one.
Ooh, yes. Let me see what's
on the shelf.
I'm looking at my shelf here, and let me pick out the best one. Man, what do I see here? How about a book called Sway? Here we go. The Irresistible Pull of Irrational Behavior.
Wow.
Yeah. Go for that, and then maybe help you take a look in the mirror and see where you can make some performance gains.
You see, that's what it's all about over here, is helping everyday people, work on their hero within and not get pulled into sabotage
That's right.
as
That's
we all
right.
can.
Find your truth, man. Find your truth.
Find your truth, find your way. Well, Jesse, thank you so much. Gratitude on behalf of all my listeners, and we hope to see you on the side of a ball field soon.
Me too. I hope to be there. I hope everyone's staying safe and healthy. And thanks again for the opportunity, Richard.
Well, that was a treasure and a gift having Jesse D. Michel on the show. If you're interested in his work with the Houston Astros or with the military, please get a hold of him on Twitter or email that he kindly lent to us, and take his book recommendations. I know they always inspire me and get me thinking about the field of sports psychology and mental skills. Again, I'm Richard Olberger, clinical psychologist. I appreciate all of you listening. Check me out on Instagram at RichardListens and patreon.com/RichardListens. And last shout out again to our sponsor, High Impact Dental Designs and Injitsu, where you can work out with an MMA fighter and even get to ask him a few questions at the end. Where else can you get to see Brad Pickett and his Millennium Falcon in the background? So I'm Richard Listens. I thank everybody. Be safe, and I'm out.